You're listening to The Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, episode 9.
But it's about taking those small pieces of larger pies over many, many deals rather than taking a large piece of a medium-sized deal.
Welcome to The Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Hi, and welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Ayers. Today we're going to be talking about going from duplexes to large apartment communities with our guest, Reed Goossens. Reed moved to the U.S. in 2012 to pursue a career in structural engineering. However, he discovered a passion for real estate investing along the way. With limited funds and no credit, Reed went from purchasing a small duplex to growing his own real estate investing firm, RSN Property Group. Reed now syndicates large multi-million-dollar deals across the U.S., and he certainly lives up to the never-say-die Aussie attitude when it comes to being a successful entrepreneur. Reed is also the host of the up-and-coming podcast, Investing in the U.S. and Aussie's Guide to U.S. Real Estate, where he invites other distinguished real estate investors and entrepreneurs to speak with him about their success and help guide other international investors who want to successfully invest in the U.S. Today, I welcome on the show Reed. Reed, how are you?
G'day, Jacob. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So, Reed, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in real estate investing?
Sure thing. Always love talking about myself, right?
Right.
Sorry for all your listeners out there. Don't mean to be big-headed. My background, interesting background. As you know, I speak with a weird accent. I come from Australia, but the reason I got involved in real estate was way back in 2008, 2009. I had been traveling abroad. I'd finished my structural engineering degree in 2007. I'd went abroad for a couple of years. When I say abroad, I went and lived in London because I was working on the summer 2012 Olympic Games, but in 2008, obviously all the infrastructure. I know you being an engineer, Jacob, that it's you understand all that sort of stuff. But I was away for a period of time. Went back to Australia. Had just had the most incredible 2 years of my entire life. During that 2 years, I'd met my current fiance, who is American. And I also backpacked through New York. I'd visited New York, and I knew I wanted to live in that period of that part of the world at some point in my life. But in 2009, had got a new job back in Australia, and sort of just the highs of my travel had really started, to dissipate. And I just sort of said to myself, like, what the hell am I doing with my life? I'd only just graduated, 3 years earlier, but I just didn't subscribe to this way that society expects you to just get a job and, work for the next 50 years of your life and, 9 to 5 days a week and then essentially just die. So that was something I didn't want to do for the rest of my life. But there was definitely an entrepreneurial spirit inside me, and I didn't know where to focus my energy on. And someone had introduced me to the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that really was like the penny drop for me. And that is sort of how I got started in investing in real estate. And my first deal didn't actually happen until I moved to the United States, but that happened a few years later after I had just consumed as much as I could about real estate investing. So yeah.
Yeah, great. So you started studying real estate, moved to the U.S., and decided to jump in once you got here. You started with smaller properties, and what were those like?
Yeah, so just to probably rewind, a little bit before then, I moved to the United States, didn't have a job. I just sort of knew that I wanted to live here in New York for a period of time with my American girlfriend, who's now my fiance. And I just packed up my life, quit my job, and we just moved here. We moved to New York City. And I distinctly remember when I first moved to the United States, for all your listeners out there, that the US has a much lower barriers to entry compared to Australia in terms of real estate. And that really intrigued me. And I remember going to my first real estate networking event. I just got off the plane. I was not even 2 weeks on the ground in New York City trying to find a job. And I was at my first, RIA event, the Real Estate Association, Real Estate Investing Association event in New York. And man, I thought, Australia had some great networking events. By gosh, the New York real estate networking events were like something on like steroids, and it was just something else, man. And coming from Australia, it was, I come from a big-ish city, maybe 1.5 million people. It's not as big as New York, so I definitely had to learn really quickly about the New York way of the American way of investing, because it was a lot different to Australia. You guys have here obviously very cheap houses that you can buy for, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, and they can, cash flow quite nicely. In Australia, you could never find that at all. So for all your listeners out there, if anyone is sitting on the fence about getting involved in real estate, I highly encourage you that, I come from a country where real estate is, think of the Los Angeles real estate market and how hot that is. That's across the entire country. But back to your original question, I got involved in my first deal in, I think, middle to late 2012. I'd been in the United States for about 6 months and attending a lot of, real estate REIA events and just consuming a bunch of knowledge. I was working still as a structural engineer, and I had a bit of money, like not a lot. I think I had about $50,000 I'd saved up. And I don't come from money, Jacob. I come from, very just a medium, blue collar family. My parents are both teachers, so nothing crazy. And they'd always taught me to, invest in real estate. So I did, and I found some really cheaper markets in about 4 hours drive north of New York City and Syracuse. And the reason I chose that market, not for anything particular, but the fact that I could drive there and things were in my price range. So I picked up my first property for about $38,000. I think it was a triplex. And that sort of, kicked me off, and I had to buy all cash because I had no credit when I first moved to the United States. And that's the start of the journey.
Yeah, I think that's great. You just mentioned, if you're on the fence and looking to invest in real estate, well, there are certainly places in the world where it doesn't make as much sense as here. So go ahead and make that jump. And you've gone a step further and done it from an international perspective. So you moved here, knew very little about U.S. real estate, and you still jumped in, and look where you are now. So, if you can do it, then, I'm sure most U.S. citizens have a leg up.
Yeah, exactly. And that was, it's why I always, I scoffed when I first moved to the United States about how just how cheap it was here, because in Australia it's more of a capital. They look for more appreciation. So yeah.
Right. Great. So you kind of saw the power of real estate when you bought these smaller multifamily properties, duplexes, triplexes, etc. And where was your moment of like aha when you decided you were going to transition into larger apartment deals?
Yeah, that was a good question. I first saw the power of real estate, of a multifamily, I should say, by cutting my teeth on this first triplex. Like, I went in there, I spent a bit of money on it. I probably spent about $10,000, and I saw that I could, increase the rent, and that was great. And I could, get my cash flow was a lot more. And to give your listeners a bit of context, I did that for a period of time, and I proved to the bank, my local bank, that I could, this property was earning cash flow or earning income. And after a period of time, I, was able to refinance some of my money out of it, very small amount, about $25,000, but it was enough to get me into another deal. And I think I got 3 or 4 deals. And essentially, I just got to the point where I couldn't scale my business. It was very limiting. I could only get a certain amount of loans, and I had all my capital. I'd spent it, right? I was still working full time, and over a period of about 18 months, I acquired about 3 or 4 properties. And I was sitting with my buddy in New York at a bar, and I said to him, "Oh, guess what I'm doing? I'm buying these great little cash flowing properties in upstate New York." And he was from Canada, and he just happened to be visiting, and he told me about that he just closed on an 80-unit property. And I said, "What the hell? How'd you close on 80 units?"
Come on, man.
And I'm sort of like scoffing, like, "Yeah, I've got 3 properties or 4 properties, and I've got maybe like 8 units between all 3 of them or 4 of them." And he sort of then explained to me the power of OPM, other people's money. And it was just, it hit me like a train. And he also explained the power of commercial real estate, where I was going into these smaller residential style properties and I was increasing the cash flow or the NOI, but I wasn't actually forcing the value of the property. And he explained to me how, this, in commercial and larger properties, you could go in, do the same thing that you're doing on the triplex and your duplexes, but do it on 100 units or 50 units or, a 20 unit property. And for that, you'd actually force the value of the property as well as increase the cash flow. And that was sort of the second aha moment in my life. And he didn't really go too much further into that, but that really sort of ignited a spark within me in early 2013. And I went and got myself a real estate mentor because I needed to surround myself with people. I said, okay, I've got to start raising capital. How do I start raising capital? Well, I need to learn from someone who does it, right? So I had to go out there and get a coach. And that's what I did. And towards the beginning of it took me about a year, but then I started RSN Property Group. And there was another year before I actually closed on my first or helped syndicate on my first deal. So by the time I had that talk with my buddy to, when I closed on my first syndication, it was a good 2 years. And so if anyone's out there listening and they're thinking, I want to make that transition, I don't know how, just understand it takes a while, but you can do it quickly. I just happened to take 2 years and that was just my journey. So yeah, I hope that explains the crossover. I'm sure you're going to have a lot more questions for me.
Yeah. Great. That's fantastic. So now you're in larger apartment communities and you're putting together deals. Could you talk a little bit about that and what those things are looking like?
Yeah, and I just want to sort of elaborate maybe a little bit more on that process, right? The how do you just went out and got a mentor and boom, it's like magic. Right. You start doing large properties. Yeah, it's a little bit more different than that. That 2 years was a lot of hustle. And it's still hustle today. Like I'm still hustling constantly. But the fundamentals of it are that you need to partner up with other people. Large multifamily buildings you can't go and take down yourself. Like maybe you could take down a 10 unit or a 20 unit if you've saved up enough money. But anything sort of larger than 50 or 100 units that you really want to scale your business or scale your real estate portfolio, you're going to need to bring on some team members. And that may be another partner with capital. It may be someone who's really knowledgeable about how to operate these buildings or find great deals. And in general, my first syndication was a very good lesson of learning about teamwork. And I think there was like 4 partners involved in that particular deal. There was a KP, which made it a 5th partner. There was a lot of people. It wasn't just me. And trying to pool all those resources together, and I took a small piece of a large pie, but it's about taking those small pieces of larger pies over many deals rather than taking a large piece of a medium-sized deal, right? So I was able to leverage other people, and they were able to leverage me, and were able to get into a larger deal. And if I didn't have those team members, I probably would have been in a smaller deal, and I wouldn't be able to scale the portfolio as much as I have today. So the real, lesson learned from all of this is that understand how to leverage mentors. I leveraged my mentor because he had done it before, and I could go out and start raising capital from friends and family because I presented a pitch deck and I said, look, I'm using my mentor's experience and credibility. Look, this incredible team that I put together, and that gave my investors some confidence. And that there, and then I leveraged another person's experience in the industry who could find great deals, and he partnered on the deal. So we all had to leverage each other's experience and abilities to get that deal closed. And it was a lot of sleepless nights, and we got the deal over the line. And that was really, really key, I think, for your listeners to understand that this is not just, you don't just snap your fingers and it just happens, but to understand the power of leverage, not only in terms of, closing on large properties, 250, 100, 150 units, but also leveraging other people within your sphere and your team that you could maybe partner with to get a larger deal done rather than closing on a smaller deal. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Those are really good points, Reed. Like you said, those things didn't just happen overnight. People may look at you from the outside and think, wow, Reed just lucked into this property, or all of a sudden just, came across this great deal. But there were 2 years of, you building, laying the foundation of, your success with this industry. So very good points.
And Jacob, I'm still laying the foundations, right? Like I'm always looking for more investors. One of the biggest lessons I've learned, like going from deal number one to deal number 2, and raising that first, $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000 was bloody hard. It's hard to, you haven't raised capital before. You're an engineer. People think of you as an engineer. So trying to change people's mindsets was very tough. And it's about setting an expectation for yourself that you may have to, you may want to break out of the rat race, but you may think, oh, it's going to take me a year. Well, it might not take you a year. It might take you 3 years, and that's okay. And someone said to me one time is that Reed, if you look back on your life when you're 80 years old or 90 years old, and you tell your grandkids that you had, 3,000 units in your portfolio, and I don't have 3,000 units, but that's the goal that I want to get to. They said, does it matter if you did it in 2017 or 2019 when you put it in perspective? And that sort of really resonated with me that it doesn't actually. And it's okay that I can just keep chugging along, maybe doing 2 or 3 deals a year, and I'll get there one day. But it was really put into perspective about like how to manage my expectations of trying to whether it's getting out of the rat race or taking that leap from small multifamily to large multifamily. As long as you're consistently working towards your goals, you'll get there, and don't ever lose sight of the end goal, but also set up the correct expectations, because I personally believe that a lot of people give up in this life because they have set the wrong expectations on the front end, and so they think, I'm going to do it in a year, and a year comes and hasn't happened, and they're like, I'm going to give up, I'm going to try something else. So I went a bit off topic there, but I hope that understands.
That's really good, Reed. I'm kind of guilty myself of setting really lofty expectations and goals, and sometimes those dates roll around and you're not there yet, and you get a little discouraged. But I think at the end of the day, you're right. You just have to keep chugging along and progressing every day, and it's not about maybe reaching that exact goal, but just being better than the day before. So really
exactly.
Good
points. And one of my goals for this year is to close on 500 units, right? And I said, okay, well, how do I get to? I've got to close in every quarter of 175 units, right? Q1's gone. I haven't closed on 175 units. But the fact is, it's also got external factors. I've got to understand that the market's really hot right now and trying to find the right deal. So it will happen. I know something's going to happen. It's all brewing, but I might go out and close on a 500 or 600 unit deal, at the end of the year, and boom, I've hit the goal, right? But the goal for Q1 was to close on 175, and I missed it. But I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm just going to keep doing the processes, keep going through the systems, going through your day to day, and understand that I'll keep chugging towards that goal. So yeah.
Right, great. And one other thing I'd like to touch on is you're talking about the power of partners and leveraging other people's money. Not only are you leveraging other people's money, but time, resources, experience, so that when you go to the table to, a lender or a property manager or another partner, it's no longer I, but now you have this team of we, and it makes carries some weight with your team there. So.
Yeah, 100%. And if there's anyone out there listening, I've got a challenge for them. If they, I highly recommend, if you are starting out, like say you got a 20 unit or 30 unit property, or even if you're trying to just start to change people's mindset, it's about putting together a pitch deck, and maybe it's a sample pitch deck, right? That you can. It's maybe a fake deal or whatever, but you're putting together, a contents page, an executive summary, a financial overview. Essentially, it's a business plan of what you're going to do with these multifamilies, and then you start presenting it to friends and family and start, walking them through this hard copy and print it out, because people like to touch and feel things, and that's a way to start getting people to change their mindset of who you are as a person, and the fact that you're trying to make that transition into larger multifamily and into syndication. So again, another little tidbit.
Yeah, and I know, Reed, you have an ebook about the 4 Ps, and one of those is professionalism, and I think that falls right in line with what you're preaching here is, portraying a professional image and playing the part.
Exactly.
So now you're into some large multifamily properties. You just closed on your first deal. When was that? The past
2015.
Yeah, okay. Could you tell us a little bit about that deal?
Yeah, sure. So that particular deal, let's talk about it. It's an interesting deal, very, very interesting deal. So I am in LA. I live in LA, and I moved here from New York in late 2014, just after I started RSN Property Group. And when I first moved here, I knew I had to, get my name out there and start being what's called, I like to call, a key person of influence. And I talk a little bit about that in my ebook. And for any of your listeners, they can get a free copy. I think I gave you one, so if they reach out to you, I'm sure you can give it to them.
Absolutely.
But the thing was, I started a networking event to get RSN's name out there, to get my name out there, and through that, and it was just meet at a bar and blah blah blah. It was pretty standard stuff. It wasn't anything. Maybe put a bit of education on, and this is again working full time. And through one of my events, a gentleman came, and he was working for a multifamily acquisition company that was based in LA, and he was their asset manager, and his name was Frank, and he said to me, look, I'm also I'm also looking at deals. I've got some pretty good deal flow, and I know how to underwrite correctly. But I need help raising the capital. And I said, well, my mentor had mentioned to me that if I brought him a really good deal, he would help me raise the capital on it. So I sort of said, okay, well, let's have a look at this. This is early 2015. I approached my mentor and I said, hey, look, meet this guy. He's a really interesting guy. He's got some great deal flow. Let's have a look at some of his deals. And it was a little bit, hot and cold for a little bit. Nothing really happened. And my mentor was like, no, I don't really want to raise money. And then I went back to him and, Frank said to me, oh, Reed, could you really ask him again? I said, okay, let me ask him again. And went back to him and said, okay, well, let's give it a go. We'll give it a crack. And yeah, we over a period of 3 or 4 months, it was a long close, but I raised, I think, about $450,000. It wasn't a lot, but it was a portion of it, and that got me in the deal. Right, again, I had no experience. I was riding on the coattails of my mentor and this other gentleman, Frank. But I got a small portion of a large 250-unit property, and that portion propelled me in a snowball effect. And it goes back to what I was saying before. I've got a small portion of a large deal, but I'd rather have that than a large portion of a small deal. And the credibility that I got from helping taking down 250 units was pretty incredible. And that particular deal was just refinanced at the end of last year. And we picked it up for $14.1 million. Frank, to his credit, has done a very great job in asset managing that thing. The net operating income has been pushed so high that it was valued at $21.8 million. So it was just, talk about economies of scale. It just blew, I was like, oh my gosh. I look back at the old underwriting. After the 5-year projection we had originally underwritten to, we didn't even project it would hit that much in value after 5 years.
Wow.
So to hit it after only 24 months was nuts, and we got to refinance 50% of our investors' money back. Obviously the GPs have done very, very well. It was just like a home run, but it comes down to Frank has done a really, really good job, and it was just right time, right place. He came to my networking event, blah blah blah. But it was a very interesting deal, and something that I look back on and just what ifs. What if I didn't meet him that night? You know what I mean? So it's interesting.
Well, that's really fantastic and an awesome story. Like you say, bringing on partners, you get a little piece of a big deal is better than no deal at all. So
exactly.
All right, so are you working on any other current deals?
Yeah, working on heaps. I've got 2 analysts who work for me full time, and they are. They're gonna. I want to transition into full time. They're currently interns and working part time. I pay them, but they're still at school, doing a great job. They're underwriting a ton of deals. Beginning of 2017, it was like 2016 was a lot of I podcast myself. I do a lot of networking. I'm trying to find deals, and I'm trying to underwrite them, and I needed to delegate a few things. So I brought on a couple of team members, which has been incredible. We're underwriting about five or six deals a week. I'm constantly raising capital. I'm looking at many deals across the country. I'm looking in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Texas. You helped me look at a deal which was incredible. San Antonio, Kansas City, and I'm actually off this weekend to Phoenix, Arizona to look at a couple of deals. So a lot's going on. Something will come under contract very soon. I've already put it on offers on about 4 deals, this year. And we probably would have underwritten about 40 deals to get to that 4. So there's a lot of work involved. And I lost out on all of them to other higher bidders, but that's good on them. It didn't work for me at that price. But I'm constantly always working on deals, looking at different things. I just hosted a mobile home bus tour, educational tour event on last Saturday, where a buddy of mine and I went up to his mobile home park, and so I'm looking at other asset classes as well. But yeah, man, the things are going crazy. It's going well. Just continue, and I'm about to launch a book, so it's all going in the right direction.
That's awesome, Reed.
Thanks.
So we've talked about your good deals. Have you had to overcome any bad deals in your?
Certainly have. Yes, I certainly have.
Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I can. So it wasn't in Touchwood. It's not in multifamily yet. It was in between moving, just before moving to. Just as I moved to LA, I'd partnered with one of my partners that one of the guys I'd partnered with on the little portfolio in upstate New York. we'd purchased a couple of properties in Philadelphia to flip, and I was a structural engineer. I did all the drawings and blah blah blah, and I was kind of managing it. He was on the ground in Philly, and I was managing it from afar, like sort of the business end behind it. And one of the deals we did just went south very quickly, and it was going very well for a long period of time. The problem was that we actually ended up putting a third story on top of an existing 2 stories, and it was a row house, right? So the property next door was 3 stories high, and we could do it by right and by zoning, and essentially the choice of contractor that it came down to, we went with the cheaper one. He didn't have a lot of experience in the sort of structural framing. It ended up turning out that he'd screwed over a lot of people in the past. He ended up screwing over us a little bit, didn't call the city out when he was supposed to for certain inspections. And it got really ugly, and we essentially had to take over the job, my partner and I, and we had to act as the general contractor. We were calling different subs, the framing sub, the plumbing, the HVAC sub. And then we had to interface with the city. Now, luckily, I had a lot of experience, a better part of a decade, working as a structural engineer. I'd interfaced with many, many cities across the globe, from London to New York to now in Philadelphia. I was having to call these sort of plan checkers to, all these inspectors to sort of get them down off their high horse, and they're going to fail me on my property that I wanted to get certificate of occupancy for. And
right.
It took a long time, but we got there in the end. We ended up selling the property, but I did take a loss. I took about a $40,000 loss. But the big point was that I didn't want to go into foreclosure because we essentially we had to fire the contractor, and we took it over ourselves and ended up finishing the job, and we got it there in the end. But it wasn't all roses and peaches. It was a slog, and it sort of taught me about that flipping is not a passive income. It's a job, and it's a lot more sleepless nights there than helping close on that 250 units. So it sort of put it in context, and I earned a lot more money on that 250 units than I did on that one single family. So anyway, that was sort of a lesson learned in that regard.
Yeah, great. Okay, so you've had a lot of success, investing not in your backyard but across the country, and you've got to credit much of that to the team you've built and the systems you've put in place. Could you talk a little bit about how you've built your team and how they've kind of led to or contributed to your success up to this point? You mentioned a little bit about your mentor, but maybe go into some property management and you're an analyst and things like that.
Yeah. In terms of mentors, obviously very, very key. If you're thinking about taking that next step, get a mentor. There's a lot of them out there. Get in whatever it might be. You might not be wanting to invest in multifamily. It might be you want to invest in mobile home parks or storage units or whatever it might be. Get a mentor who's actively doing it. That's the first piece. The second piece about a team is get to your local real estate networking events and try and establish as many relationships as you can, because you never know when someone in a market may pop up. And I've got friends in markets across the country that I've created relationships through, either through my podcast or through my networking. And through that relationship, I'm able to leverage them to, help me find good property managers or or they can go look at a deal, or they can help me, they can give me insight on a market. So having a boots on the ground team member is really, really helpful. And you might not necessarily be a partner. It might just be someone who you can rely on, just call up every now and then. You build rapport with them, and they just, you say, hey, I'm looking at a property in Kansas City. Like, what do you think of this area of the city? Is it a go, or what do you think? And they might give you some feedback. And typically, if you're with like-minded individuals, and that's through that networking portion that I was speaking about, people are more willing to help you out because you're a good person, you're a professional. Maybe you can cut them part of the deal if you find them a good deal. Whatever it might be. You're creating relationships, you're constantly creating relationships, and those relationships always can be used to help vet a deal, help find the better team members, maybe find some capital. So I encourage everyone, if you are investing out of state, to try and establish a local presence, and that just might be you might have to fly there, check out the neighborhoods, do a tour out there, meet some local people at the local RIA event, try and befriend them, and then over time you can try and use them to help you close on more deals. And I've, as I said, I've got people in Dallas Fort Worth. Jacob, you helped me with that Houston deal. And that there can be really, really powerful when you're trying to spread your wings, so to speak, and invest out of state. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, great advice. Great stuff. Well, Reed, you're rocking and rolling along, taking down properties left and right, it seems. What are your future goals, and what's the future of RSN?
Yeah, good question. I think the future of RSN is really it's twofold. I really want to continue to grow, obviously, the portfolio base. It's very, very important for me. But I also want to continue to grow my investors' capital and preserve their capital for a long period of time. I want to grow into a company that is a very reputable company, and having a team around my analysts and soon to be full timers, and probably in the next 12 to 18 months, I'll probably hire an asset manager myself, rather than me doing it all. That is sort of where the goal is headed. And I would also like to do some more ground up construction work, because that's where I've lived and breathed that stuff for the better part of a decade in the engineering fields. There's a lot of money to be made there, but it's, again, a different type of asset class. I'm also excited about, creating the financial, wealth for my family and my loved ones. And looking to grow my personal brand as well, me, Reed Goossens, and the book's coming out and my own podcast, and just continue to grow as an entrepreneur. I'm really enjoying the journey, and that's probably another big thing, that it's not about the end goal, it's about the journey and enjoying it along the way as well, and helping as many people as I can. I'm trying to give back to my local community. I've got my own meetup event here, and I've got a mentorship program that I help investors get to that next level. So trying to be a full circle type of investor myself, but also a leader, an entrepreneur, and a business owner. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And you've kind of mentioned that it's beyond just financial freedom, but you're for yourself, but starting to give back and kind of create that Reed Goossens legacy. So,
yeah, exactly.
So what are some of your reasons why? And, why are you doing what you're doing, and what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, the original whys, I think, are still relatively the same. Is that financial freedom is what was the original why before. I was fed up of answering to a boss. I've now created a little company. It's only a small company, but let's be honest, but it will grow. But I'm now in control of my time, and that's really, really important for me. And that why, in terms of getting up and making sure, let's be honest here, it's not. I've still got to get up and hustle, because my paycheck is relied upon how I hustle throughout the day, and what deals I'm closing on. So that motivates me to get up. I still haven't hit that the financial quote unquote goals that I want to hit, but I'll get there eventually. But now it's relied upon me, and I've got team members, so it's really, really awesome to get up and create something. I think that it's just really cool. I've always been a mathematical brain, and to create a business and to create a team and an atmosphere and a sense of desire and mission in a business is really, really exciting. And again, I'm enjoying that journey. And the reason I get up out of bed is because I am enjoying that journey. So
that's great.
Yeah.
I think having a powerful reason why is an absolute must. It kind of keeps you going through some of those hard times, and it gets you out of bed in the morning and keeps you going. So
exactly, and that why may change over time. As you hit your certain goals, it may change, and that's and that's okay. And things might happen in life, and that's completely okay as well. But I think at the end of the day, my underlying reason was to take control of my life. So yeah, that's I'm still always striving towards that, right?
Right. Okay, Reed, well, as we're wrapping up, I'd like to end with a lightning round of questions. So just a series of questions we've got for you. So I'm going to shotgun you with those and just kind of shoot from the hip. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
All right. So first, what was your biggest hurdle getting started in real estate investing, and how did you overcome it?
Good question. It's supposed to be lightning round, but maybe it's a slow lightning round.
That's fine.
Biggest hurdle, I think, is, and like anything, it's just backing yourself, right? Having the my biggest hurdle was knowing that I had the knowledge to back myself and go out. And there's always a leap of faith at some point in your career, whether buying that first property to transitioning to larger properties. There's always that fear of being uncomfortable. And that's okay. You have to embrace that fear. And I've learnt over time that it's okay. It's being comfortable being uncomfortable, if that makes sense. So that was probably my biggest hurdle, getting off the fence and getting into real estate in the beginning, is getting off the fence and just, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Get used to it.
Yeah, right. You don't know everything, and if you wait until you do, then you'll never get started. Exactly. Okay, do you have a personal habit that contributes to your success?
Yes, I do. I'm hugely into my exercise. I'm a very, very go type of guy. My fiance always describes me as like that kid with ADD. He's like, okay, I'm at the sandbox. I'm now on the swing set. I'm now on, I'm always going, and my mind's always going. And so one way to help me, I'm always needing to be physical and go to the gym or go for a run, or, I try to do that 4 or 5 days a week. And that I keep good health of my body. And I think if you keep yourself right, you've got to look after yourself first. You can then help others. You can then make sure your business is running well. You can make sure you're guiding others along a correct path, and having investors in the right deals and making the right decisions to grow a business. So again, it starts with me, and my goal or my habit is to exercise. And one of the new habits that I'm really loving is journaling. It's very, very important to get stuff out of my head and onto paper, because I'll constantly keep thinking about it, and I won't get any sleep overnight time.
Yeah, great. Okay, do you have an online resource that you find valuable?
Yes, online resources. I think for anyone out there, if you're just getting started, great online resources. It's a plug to someone else, but it's okay. It's Bigger Pockets. It's a great way also to network with other people, and maybe to create those connections in some out-of-state markets that you might be looking at. Always jump online and post some questions about, might be investing in one particular suburb or one particular market outside of your area. Can anyone give you any advice? Meet people that way. So that's been a really beneficial tool for me when I first got started.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all on there. We're all members and have our profiles, and it's a great networking medium. So I'd highly recommend it as well.
Yep.
Okay, what book would you recommend to the listeners, and why?
Oh, I think there's a couple of books out there. Obviously, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Have to read that. I've met a few people who've read it, and they maybe read it at too early a stage in their life, and now they read it, 10 years later, and it's so Rich Dad Poor Dad is obviously one. Another one I really enjoyed was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, and I've read that in probably the last 12 months, and I know it's an older book, but it really helped me with automation and making sure that I'm delegating the right tasks, and that sort of lit the fire to get some interns this year, and then create, I've got some online virtual assistants and blah, 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 to just start delegating. Otherwise, if I keep control of it all and try to do it all myself, I'm not going to be able to grow and scale my business. So those two books are pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. That one for me is one of the ones that I read, but maybe a little too early in my real estate investing journey. So one that's on my revisit list, that's for sure.
Yep.
Okay, if you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self to get started in real estate investing, what would it be?
My advice to my 20-year-old self would be to 20, I was sort of 25, 26 when I first picked up the book. I think it would just be that I look back and I've had pretty incredible experiences, and I wouldn't give any of those experiences up to give to where I am. Because when I was 20, I was at university and I had a great, I enjoyed university. I went traveling for a couple of years, backpacking, and all those things I think help towards your craving to maybe change whatever it might be in your life. So my advice to my 20-year-old self is keep probably doing what you're doing. You'll get there eventually, and keep hustling, and also, never give up. That's probably the biggest piece of advice. It is never keep striving towards your goals, and never stop being better than you were the day before. So, yeah.
That's great. I couldn't agree more. All right, Reed. Well, we're starting to wrap up. You happen to have your own podcast called Investing in the U.S., an Aussie's Guide to U.S. Real Estate with Reed Goossens. And you have RSN Property Group. Is there any place else our guests should go to find more about you? or connect with you?
Those two websites coming up soon is my personal website, readgoossens.com, but that's not up and running just yet. But those two either on iTunes, with my podcast, and or on RSN Property Group. And if anyone is in LA, I'm always eager to go out for coffee or a beer or lunch or whatever. So you can always hit me up, and you can hit me up at Reed, that's REED, at rsnpropertygroup.com. R for Roger, S for Sam, N for Nancy. So yeah.
All right, great, Reed. Well, we certainly appreciate having you on the show today, and it was a pleasure talking with you.
Hey, man, thank you so much. Keep up the great work. This is an incredible podcast. It's going to reap you so many benefits and rewards, and you're going to open some incredible doors. So I'm wishing you the best of luck.
Thank you. I look forward to it, Reed.
Cheers.
Take care. All right, that wraps up our episode today with Reed. Reed is a great guy, and he brings a unique perspective to U.S. real estate investing. I hope you're receiving value from this show. If you like what you've heard so far, I invite you to let me know by leaving a rating and review. Please subscribe to the show to be notified of future episodes. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me at www.jacobayers.com or email me at info@jacobayers.com. Until next time, signing off, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC, exclusively.